G'day guys, Mac with the Circle, and today, well, I haven't quite thought of what I want to title this video yet at the time of recording, so hopefully you came across it and thought that's a snappy title, I really want to watch this. But probably not, probably came up with something boring in the end. I suppose the thing that I want to talk about is how Games Workshop could win me and a lot of other people back. This isn't a negative episode at all. In fact, I just want to suggest things I think they could do that would really improve customer relations. A couple of things that would be smart for them as a business and good for us as players, so a win-win type thing. This is part of this new direction I want to go in, where instead of talking about all the things they're doing wrong, I want to talk about some things they could do right, and right by us as players. So, first of all, let's get the bad thing out of the way. They have not responded to multiple emails I've sent to the company about the petition. So, number one thing they could do to improve right now, actually communicating with the players. Whilst they don't owe us anything, I think at 8,500 people, we probably deserve a response of some kind. I know dozens of people have linked this petition to their Forge World page, to the Games Workshop pages on Facebook. I myself have sent emails to Games Workshop in Australia, America, Britain, Forge World in Australia, Britain, America, all over the place, investor relations, the works. Not just once, multiple times. I've screenshotted it, put it on our Facebook, and there's just been zero feedback. Not even a, we've got your email and we'll notify higher. Just literally all I've got in response is the automated email that says we've received your email. And that's really disappointing that even with 8,500 people petitioning them, they can't say anything. So, if they want to say they're the new Games Workshop and that they talk to the customers and they have community engagement, I think they need to demonstrate it in some capacity. Any single person commenting about, you raised your prices, this is wrong, sure, they'll ignore it. But I think, speaking on behalf of 8,500 people, I did probably deserve some form of response from them, and the fact that they haven't kind of says a lot. It's disappointing. Anyway, real talk, let's move on to important stuff. First things first, I would love to see Games Workshop actually try and tie in their specialist games releases, or releases in general, with their video games. This would be great for us as players, because instead of getting a Battlefleet Gothic game 3-4 years before I get a tabletop game, I could actually play a tabletop game and a PC one at the same time, and you'll get a bit of cross-pollination there. You'll get people who only know the computer games go, oh geez, what's this tabletop game about? Oh, I wouldn't mind trying that out. And you'll get people on the tabletop going, oh, I love the tabletop game, but maybe there's not enough people in my area or something, and I just don't get out to play it, or I can't afford it, or I can't paint it, or whatever reason. They'll turn around and go, hey, maybe I'll buy the video game instead. And you might pick up double the sales, you might pick up no extra sales, but it's better than what they're doing right now, in my opinion. So that's a nice simple one. Another big thing I think would really win back the players, well, it would have to be Rogue Trader. Do a re-release of Rogue Trader. You clearly have the sculpted assets already. You have people who can do Rogue Trader inspired models in the form of like the Forge World Land Speeder or the limited edition Rogue Trader Marine that Games Workshop bought out. And of course they have the CAD model for the current Beaky Marines. Actually, they already have the model saved in their files over at Games Workshop. He's sitting down there on the lower right part of the screen. A Rogue Trader game would be probably the biggest and best thing they could do for 40k right now, because it wouldn't just affect 40k, it would hit everyone who has nostalgia and wants to try out those older game systems. Marines are never out of fashion as well, so you'd have that market. You also have the Horus Heresy crowd, all the Raven Guard players, the Alpha Legion players, the people who want to play later Heresy games or even Scouring. They want access to the Beaky Marines, and currently the only way to do it is either to buy a lot of tactical squads and farm one model out of them, or they have to go to Forge World and buy them in resin. So since they're getting rid of the Health boxes, and they'll probably phase out the Burning of Prospero boxes in the near future, why not replace them with something that can be used for 40k and for 30k, and which appeals to all the older nerds out there like myself who want to play those old-fashioned games one more time. You could also bring in something like the Furibundus Pattern Dreadnought, one of the ugliest sculpts going in 40k, and reimagine it like was done with the Contemptor, with the Derideo, with the Leviathan, with the Vorax, with the Castellax, and other automata. All these weird Rogue Trader era models that kind of didn't work, if they were ugly or weird, we could bring them back, reimagine them, bring them out in plastic, and there's something that could be used in 40k, either as a relic unit or just merge them into regular armies of Space Marines, much like what was done with the Cataphractii Terminator armor, the Mark III Iron armor, the Mark IV Maximus pattern armor, the Tartarus armor, all these different armor patterns that they brought out for Heresy that 40k players could also use. Well, you could do the same thing with Rogue Trader. And unlike other specialist games where the terrain limits the use of it in 40k, or the models, for example, if you play Necromunda, you can't really use your Goliath house, for example, to play games of 40k. It just doesn't really work. But if you had a box full of Beaky Marines from Rogue Trader, you could definitely play games of 40k with those. So I think this would be one of the biggest things they could do for the hobby, and it would sell probably better than Burning of Prospero. It would sell better than Betrayal at Kelth. It would probably be up there with 40k starter sets for sales if it was done right. On top of this, I think the next big thing to point out is price drops. They need to drop everywhere in the world except for the UK by 10%, bring those prices down, and for places like Australia and New Zealand by 20%. And don't think this is going to harm the company's bottom line that much. They made hundreds of millions of dollars last year. A slight drop in the immediate prices will do two big things. First, it will encourage a lot of people who left Games Workshop to come back. People like myself would go, hey, you know what? 20% price drop, it's still more than what people in the UK pay for Games Workshop, but hey, I'm willing to pay that because, yes, you've got to ship them all to Australia. Yes, it may cost more for staff wages here. Yes, cost of living, in Australia and New Zealand, the cost of living is actually pretty comparable to the UK. Sydney's more expensive than London to live in, apparently. But bringing those prices down, I don't seek parity with UK prices, but I don't expect them to be as inflated as they are. So bringing them down, that would definitely bring back a lot of people, and a lot of people I personally know who've left the Games Workshop hobby because of those prices. A lot of people who've turned to recasting, for example, turned to recasting because they said, look, the prices are just too much now. And I would gladly turn back if they drop prices just a tiny bit. And literally, 20% is not really going to hurt their profits that much when they've already increased prices by 40 to 60% in this region. Okay, they're still going to make plenty of money, plenty of profit. And the fact they'll be shipping more volume will work in their favour because more units sold means they probably make just as much money in the end anyway. But the other big thing that dropping prices would do is customer loyalty would dramatically increase. I mean, even after all the price rises that have gone through recently with Forge World, some models up to 80% higher prices, there are still people defending Games Workshop and Forge World over the decision. That's how loyal people are to this company. So could you imagine the sort of loyalty that would be gained by Games Workshop just by dropping prices 10 to 20% globally? The loyalty gained would be huge. And not only would you have the influx of new players, or players that have already left the hobby coming back, but you would have an absolute butt ton of existing players going, I'm so glad I stuck with this company through all the bad decisions because, man, they've really gifted us with this. Good on them for doing something really good by us as players. And finally, one last thing that would definitely be good for the game, and for 40k, and for myself especially, Chaos 40k Space Marines are the biggest faction after the Space Marines. I've done polling before. I did a whole episode where I went through and polled hundreds of responses and figured out what factions people were playing in 40k. Now granted, the sample size wasn't huge. This channel doesn't have huge pool, so I can't get a sample size of 10,000 or 100,000 players. But I got hundreds of responses, and I was able to conclusively say, hey, do you know Chaos Space Marines are actually a bigger selling faction than Space Marines? And people went, oh, you're full of shit. I went, no. Space Marines are their own faction. Once you add in Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Grey Knights, forces that are also Space Marines, but distinct armies with distinct books, then the Space Marines are the highest selling faction. But overall, Chaos actually sold more than like the Ultramarines, Raven Guard, White Scars, Iron Hands, all those books that come under the single sort of codex. They sold more than all of those. People had more armies of, Khorne Berserkers and Thousand Sons and Death Guard than all those Space Marines. So they are a massive selling faction. Chaos Space Marines and Space Marines are the two biggest factions. Overhaul the basic troops in the Chaos forces. Well, I'm talking your basic Terminators, basic Space Marines, and your HQ options. You might do something with the vehicles as well. What this will do is it will overhaul units that can be used by the Night Lords, the Word Bearers, they can be used by the Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, all those sort of unnamed traitors like Red Corsairs and all the Scourged and other traitor chapters and legions that people have made up. All of those will be catered for, and they'll keep the Chaos fans happy. From there, go off and work on the Xenos. Actually give new units to the Orcs, new units to the Eldar, new units to the Tau, look after those factions, and then come back to Chaos. Give them their Khorne Berserkers, give them their Noise Marines, work on those sort of factions at that point. Because right now we do have a lot of saturation of Space Marines and a lot of saturation of Chaos Marines. And I know that what I'm saying sounds sort of really contradictory, like, we need Rogue Trader and we need more Chaos Space Marines, but there's too much Space Marines. It's how it's done is the difference. Rogue Trader isn't just adding more Space Marines into 40k, it's adding a variety of Space Marines to multiple game systems. Rogue Trader, 40k, 30k. It's appealing to a completely different demographic. And same thing with Chaos. If you look at the basic Chaos infantry, like your Chosen, your Chaos Space Marines, your Terminators, you bring out new sculpts for those. Models that haven't had a new sculpt in 15, 20 years, I'll add. You bring out new sculpts for those, it will make the Chaos players happy and give you enough breathing room to go focus on something different. So that's why I don't think it's a contradictory statement to say you need to look after Chaos and look after Space Marines, but there's too much Chaos and too many Space Marines. I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound like the crazy ramble I think it does when I'm recording this. So, anyway, that's my thoughts. Simultaneous video game releases, along with the specialist games, so that the two tie in with one another and you get people who are able to move between the two, will bring more people into this hobby, and it will also generate more sales for Games Workshop through the video games portal. Also, actually responding to your community. If 8,500 people contact you about prices, or continuously petition you on your Facebook pages and leave messages for you every day on every post, perhaps respond to some of them. You can't treat the customers with complete contempt for too long, because that takes down the customer loyalty, which of course can be improved by lowering prices. So you see how it all ties back together like that? That's really neat, I didn't even plan that when I was recording this, because this is all off the cuff. Lowering prices builds brand loyalty, brings back in people who quit the hobby due to prices. You sell more models, you create more volume, and even though there's a little bit less margin, you make a little bit less out of each box, you're going to sell more boxes, so you're going to make more in the long run anyway. Also, Rogue Trader. It appeals to the old hammer guys, it appeals to people who collect Space Marine armies, it appeals to the 30k crowd especially, who right now are feeling pretty butthurt. Not gonna lie, a year without a main release of a book, I mean we're talking, March last year, when the Prospero book dropped, a book that was pretty coldly received due to a lot of balance issues within it. Coupled with the fact that models are disappearing, Forge World prices have gone up, the death of the late great Alan Bly, All these things have had a huge impact on 30k community. So a Rogue Trader box full of miniatures that can be used for 30k in plastic, you don't understand what a gift that would be to Heresy players. So you got to look after them as well. Also, the fact they can be used in regular games at 40k. Come on, that's something that your other specialist games can't do. You can't see people using Titans from Adeptus Titanicus and Titanicus Terrain for 40k. It just doesn't work. And, of course, as I was saying, do something with the basic Chaos Space Marines. Get it out of your system, Games Workshop. Keep the Chaos players happy by giving them some actual new models, and then spend a long, hard time working on the bloody Xenos. Give the Eldar players something to work with. Give the Orcs especially. Orcs need a new Gazkal model. He should have a massive model. We're talking like bigger than a Space Marine Dreadnought. It's the Mad Uruk himself. You could have a tie-in campaign where the Imperial Guard get a new Commissar Yarrick in plastic. You could do a lot with it, and you could please so many people, and that's the sort of thing it would take to make me come back to 40k. And you do that, you'll get my blessing. You do the right thing by us. I will go out there and say, I was wrong. This company is not a terrible company. They've actually listened to our feedback, and here's what they're doing for us. Anyway, I'm back with the Outer Circle. Please leave your thoughts and feedback below, and I'll see you all next time.